At the site of Osama bin Laden's most terrible attack. Barack Obama says, when we say we will never forget, we mean what we say.
For the president to circle back to the memorial and come here and lay a wreath in respect to the family members is a way of gesturing that there is closure in this particular part of history.
In Pakistan, meanwhile, an official inquiry is open to answer an explosive question. Why was bin Laden able to find refuge there for so long? Welcome to our viewers on PBS here in America, but also around the globe. Nearly a decade after this part of Manhattan was laid waste during the 9/11 attacks, and 4 days after the killing of Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind those attacks, President Obama came to the city today to close the book on America's most wanted foe. On the plane over on Air Force One, he told reporters that this was a bittersweet moment, adding, "When we say we will never forget, we mean what we say." Then he came right here to Ground Zero to lay a wreath in a place that has become one of the scars of American history, a defining scar alongside the battlefield at Gettysburg and the memorial at Pearl Harbor. From Ground Zero, here's our North America editor, Mark Mardell.
It is President Obama's first visit to the hole in the heart of Manhattan, Ground Zero. He came in somber triumph. This is where the Twin Towers once stood until bin Laden ordered an attack which killed more than 3,000 and seared America's soul. The president laid a wreath, hoping the death of bin Laden lays to rest the spectre that's haunted his country ever since. The president isn't making any speech, any remarks here. His spokesman says that his action in honouring the dead is more powerful than any words. And the more he appears to rise above politics, the more political benefit he can reap. 15 firefighters from this Midtown station died on 9/11, and here the president did speak, saying in Pakistan at the weekend, justice was done in the name of their brothers.
What happened on Sunday, because of the courage of our military and the outstanding work of our intelligence, sent a message around the world, but also sent a message here back home that when we say we will never forget, we mean what we say.
The promise that he kept was made by another president at Ground Zero just 3 days after the attack.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Not that soon, but the frustrating wait has made revenge sweeter for many here. Outside this country, there's more disquiet. The Archbishop of Canterbury has said bin Laden was a war criminal, but that he was uncomfortable about his killing. And the UN Human Rights Chief has said the world has a right to know if it was all legal. Rennie Archibald, a firefighter from Boston, who spent 8 months here following 9/11, going through the wreckage, has no such doubts.
Yeah, he was armed. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he killed 3,000 people. That should not be an issue, the way he died.
We found Reef Karim at the memorial wall, laying flowers for 2 friends who died 10 years ago.
We had this black cloud hanging over the world, really, because bin Laden's killed people in all sorts of countries. And at least with the pride that we have here, I think it's fantastic.
Well, the building was actually over here. Remember, the building...
Charles Wolfe's wife died when the Twin Towers were hit. He met the president today and thanked him for ordering the killing of the man behind the attack.
We got sucker punched. We got caught with our pants down. And then we went in there, you know, with our men and our equipment and our method of doing things, and we got the job done.
One visit, one death, does not heal a wound so profound, but America feels better about itself and positive towards the president who avenged what happened here. Mark Mardell, BBC News, New York.
In Pakistan itself, where Osama bin Laden was found and killed, they opened an official inquiry today into one key question. How is it possible that the world's most recognizable fugitive was able to hide not in a remote cave somewhere in the mountains, but in a villa in the Pakistani equivalent of a McMansion right next to a military academy without being discovered? Pakistani authorities say they also want to prevent the bin Laden compound from becoming a theme park of terror. From Abbottabad in Pakistan, is our correspondent, Orla Guerin.
Sealed off and silent, Bin Laden's compound, long a place of secrets. But more details are emerging from one of his wives, Amal, who's now in Pakistani custody. She's alleged to have told interrogators that Bin Laden hadn't left his room here for the past 5 years. She is Yemeni born and was Bin Laden's youngest wife. When the Navy SEALs attacked, she tried to defend him and was shot. Pakistani officials say she has revealed key weaknesses in Al-Qaeda. It's split in two and is having money problems. And they say evidence found at the compound backs this up. The army has ordered an inquiry into the intelligence failures that let Bin Laden set up home here. But the government continues to insist there was no collusion.
It's easy to say that the inter-services intelligence or elements within the government were in cahoots with the Al-Qaeda. This is a false hypothesis.
And the military claims it gave the Americans the key lead, information about a phone call from here last month to Saudi Arabia asking for finance. The dilemma for Pakistan is what to do with this compound, to open the doors and let the cameras in, or to blow the place up, as some are speculating. There is concern that if it's left standing, it could become a kind of monument to Osama bin Laden and perhaps a propaganda tool. It is already a local tourist attraction. It's now a place for a family day out, much photographed and much debated, though many locals don't believe this was home to the world's most wanted. More of the inside story could come from Bin Laden's relatives and the other survivors of the raid. 15 are in Pakistani hands. America wants to question them, but so far it's not getting the chance. Orla Guerin, BBC News, at Bin Laden's compound.
And we'll have more from here at Ground Zero later in the programme, but let's first go to Catty Kay in Washington. Catty.
Matt, thank you. And we should note that tomorrow President Obama will travel to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for a private meeting with members of the Navy SEALs team that killed Osama bin Laden. We'll be following that, of course. I'm joined now by Tom Ridge, who served as the first Secretary of Homeland Security, a position that was created after the attacks of 9/11. Secretary Ridge, thanks so much for coming in.
Okay, my pleasure.
As you've imagined over the last few years, all the scenarios under which Osama bin Laden might have been caught or captured or killed, was this ever one of them?
I don't think we ever took any option off the table. It was interesting, President Bush's comments shortly after 9/11, we would bring him to justice, and somebody asked him, a reporter actually asked him, dead or alive, and he said, I don't care. Americans really don't care, in spite of the fact there might be others that are a little bit concerned. Perhaps he didn't get his Miranda warnings at the time of the incident, but I do think that it was a courageous effort on the part of the SEALs, an extraordinary effort on the part of the intelligence community. We made a commitment to 3,000 families. The President Obama said, what we say what we mean what we say, we won't forget, we meant what we said we'd find them. We'd get them sooner or later.
As the first Secretary of Homeland Security, clearly this is something that's preoccupied you for a very long time. Now that Osama bin Laden is dead, are you heaving a big sigh of relief?
Not at all.
Can you sleep easier at night?
No, I think it was gratifying they were able to accomplish that goal, and that's to eliminate the face of global terrorism. But it's also very sobering because the nature of the threat globally has changed. I think it's more complex. It's far more diverse. There are new sanctuaries. It used to be the Taliban in Afghanistan and perhaps in Pakistan, but it's spread to the Middle East, to North Africa. There are new leaders. There are new tactics. And quite obviously, as we've seen in the United States and even in Great Britain, the profile of the prospective terrorist has changed. We now have to deal with that phenomenon of homegrown terrorists, people who we have embraced in our community, thought were living normal lives, had communicated with neighbors, and yet are committed and have bought into his philosophy. So I say, we terminated the man, but the flawed ideology lives on.
And do you think we'll learn things from the death of bin Laden and from all of that wealth of information that was taken out of his building that will help us combat terrorism in the future? And we've just had news coming in that one of the first pieces of information that's come out of the compound indicates Al-Qaeda was considering attacking US trains, for example. Do you think that kind of information now makes us safer?
Well, any information, particularly gathered at that level in this compound, will be hugely helpful, not only the United States, but I suspect there's information relating to potential attacks in other countries. So clearly it's helpful. But what it doesn't do for us, and perhaps it does, and we'll never know exactly what they discovered, but the fact of the matter remains is that he was the inspirational leaders. Others have, perhaps for different outcomes, but adopted the philosophy, adopted the tactics. And frankly, if you take a look, there are probably several radical Islamic movements around the world. Not all of them are for the purpose of restoring the caliphate. But the fact of the matter is that strategically Al-Qaeda is impaired, but the movement of radical Islam, the perversion of a historic and proud religion, continues today. We killed bin Laden, but that belief system, that mindset, that flawed ideology that very few people have to embrace in order to cause massive harm, damage, pain, and suffering, that persists, which means for the next generation or two, the world will continue to be challenged.
So measuring the real impact is going to take some time.
Quite some time.
Tom Ridge, thanks very much for coming to join us.
Pleasure, Kay. Thank you.
And returning now to our top story, the visit of President Barack Obama to the Ground Zero site in New York. Matt Fry has been covering events there all day. We go back to him now at the scene. Matt.
Thanks, Katy. Well, as you know, 9/11 has spawned a decade of unfinished wars, mutual misunderstanding between America and the rest of the world, and some pretty terrible statistics. But here in Lower Manhattan, the hunt for Osama bin Laden and the conflict with Al-Qaeda has also been a very personal business, especially for the relatives of the firefighters who lost their lives on 9/11 in their service. For them, Osama bin Laden is now a foe vanquished. It was on a day just like this that the unthinkable happened here, and ever since, Ground Zero has been the open wound in the heart of Lower Manhattan, defining America for almost a decade. Today, the bulldozers are busy, finally, and planes above New York are no longer feared as missiles. But the wound has been slow to heal because justice for 9/11 has been so slow to come. Until this week. The faces of the fallen firefighters on Greenwich Street are an eerie reminder of just how late justice has been. More than 340 perished on that day when the towers collapsed.
Are you going back?
Good job. They became the most celebrated fallen heroes of 9/11. This is the Essex World Diner, so close to Ground Zero it was used as a medical station on the day. Today, firefighters and construction workers treat it like a canteen. But the walls are still full of aching memories. Here we met Al and Maureen Santoro, who lost their son Christopher, a firefighter, and Jim Ritchie, who lost his son Jimmy. What has the death of Osama bin Laden changed for them?
It restored some of our American pride because we're a proud country. We think we're a strong country and a strong nation. It sends a message to the terrorists that 9.5 years later, whether it's 1 year, 9.5 years, we're going to track you down and we're going to kill you.
There's no closure when you lose a child. There'll never be closure for us. We are different now than we were before this happened. But our son is gone, and no matter what happens, he will still be gone.
I'm just hoping that my grandchildren and their children, perhaps, don't live in the same kind of world that we are in right now.
For some, especially the families of the dead, the pain will never go away. But America has had a cathartic week, and in the silence of today's ceremony, the president has found a voice that many of his critics thought he never had. But everyone here has learnt the hard way that the war against extremism is full of unintended consequences. A memorable day here in Manhattan. For me, Matt Fry at Ground Zero, and Katy Kay in Washington, and all of us at BBC World News America, it's goodbye. And see you tomorrow.
I'm Jane O'Brien. As Al-Qaeda issues an intimate statement admitting bin Laden is dead, Barack Obama thanks and decorates the US troops who killed him.
It was a chance for me to say on behalf of all Americans and people around the world, job well done. Job well done.
How brave are the Syrian protesters? In city after city, people take to the streets yet again, defying government threats and violence.